pleased to invite our panelists to join us. Thank you. Okay, so as you heard, my name is Marlène Losier. I'm an international expert in international law and policy. I practice for my own little boutique, Losier González, and it's a pleasure and honor to be here today to moderate the second panel called The Emerging International Commitment to Space. During our discussion today, we will explore the evolving character of international collaboration in an exciting and dynamic global context that is facilitating the expansion of space exploration and utilization. In the recent years, it has become more and more evident that the nature of international relations with regard to space has changed significantly from how it had essentially began between states more than half a century ago. The impetus and ambition for space exploration has altered, inspired, and nourished the nature of not only intergovernmental relations, but a diverse range of public and private, commercial and academic, scientific and legal, and even the most simple human relationships that influence almost all aspects of human life around the Earth and beyond it. To reflect on this evolution of international relations and consider the management of its current and future dynamics, we are most fortunate to have here with us today a panel of one of the most distinguished experts practicing and shaping the nature of international relations purposely from a global center in which its policies take shape and are elaborated. This afternoon, I welcome and introduce our panelist, Dr. Masami Onoda, Director of the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency's Washington, D.C. office, from which she represents JAXA in North and South America. Welcome. Mr. Krunal Joshi, who is the representative of the Indian Space Research Organization and Counsellor for Space at the Embassy of India in Washington, D.C. Welcome. Mr. Aniello Violetti, who is the Space Attaché at the Embassy of Italy in Washington also. Benvenuto. And Mr. Nicolas Melbert, who is the representative of the French Space Agency and Space Attaché to the Embassy of France here in DC. So today, I will pose a series of questions to inspire our discussions. We'll start with question number 1. We have witnessed in recent years a growing number and diversity of actors and international relationships centered around or relating to space. Historically, the Forum for International Collaboration may have predominantly been at and through the UN Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, or COPUOST, based in Vienna. However, this given may be changing, or arguably has already changed. Can you please comment on what, if any, other forums or geographical hubs are emerging as centers enabling vibrant and substantive collaboration in and or relating to space? What do you think is the evolving and potentially future dynamic between those increasingly prominent forums and the COPUOST? So let's start with perhaps Dr. Onoda.
Okay. Thank you, Marlène, for the wonderful introduction, and thank you, Beyond Earth Institute, for having us here. It's such a nice and, I would say, homely environment to talk about what we are doing now to go to Moon, Mars, and beyond our Earth. So since it was mentioned that you invited particularly doers here, I would like to start out from my own experience when I was 26 years old, which I would like to say wasn't that much of a long time ago. Anyway, when I was just starting out my career, there was a time when I was seconded to the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs. So that was one of my experiences being exposed to the United Nations at that time. And I was astonished by, if anybody has been to the UNOV, there is office in Vienna, there is this rotunda with all the flags. 100 nations will come to Cottbus every year and will speak about space and how to utilize space in the peaceful uses of outer space. So there is no other place that can do that, and it struck me, that was something I'd never seen when I was in the little island of Japan, coming out there. Also, I tried to, of course I was working there, so I needed a computer, right? So I had to have my own laptop there. It took me a week to have my own laptop, when in JAXA probably I'll get it in an hour. And it took another week to set it up. So that's just an example, I think, of how this environment is wonderful. It has its own power, of course, but it's also, no organization is perfect. Also, I would like to argue that the UN Cottbus, being the only place probably that states, that number of states gather, I also think that there have been traditionally always other venues. It's only that the diversity has grown so much that the other venues are now becoming probably more prominent and more important. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the UN role has changed that much. And I do join the World Economic Forum these days. I wouldn't say that is perfect either, but it's a different way of discussion, and they do talk about space a lot these days. So I'd just like to point that we're not perfect, but we try to, and having a diverse venues to talk about space, I think, is wonderful.
Thank you. Aniello?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I just want to say, Marlène, that I'm not an expert. As you most of you know, that I'm come from a test pilot world. So in 2017, somebody said, just start to do space, and I said, okay, that's nice, interesting, and I start to do space. So, and basically, when you invited me for this panel, I started to study also about Cottbus and all the other stuff, because actually, as most of you know, I concentrate in my business in cooperation, international cooperation, about especially around the commercial cooperation, industry and stuff. But I'm discovering interesting things, and just I go very, very quick because I see the time running down. First of all, I learned from my friends from ASI, Italian Space Agency, that Italy is very good in space diplomacy. And we really believe in this kind of approach for highlighting our capabilities, technologies, and as country. I know that we really participate to this kind of contest committee in a very good ways. Like we are very committed to the policies and regulation in the Cottbus, and really believe that the importance of that. But coming back to your question, I would say you are talking about apps and a new organization, like we heard about Compact before. I think when I'm reading a lot about this stuff, and I've seen that they're very concentrating at regional level, like local level. They are not really or specific topics. Now, I think could they be important and relevant and like so? Could reach so big consensus like Cottbus? I don't think so. I think they could help Cottbus. I mean, like we could use these kind of apps and these kind of little fora that are like discovering, racing every day, to support and to reach, to give some instruments to Cottbus to create this general consensus. And coming back to what Masami was saying, I think it's true. The policy and the regulation are very low in that fora, but maybe it's not about if the Cottbus is really a good instrument or not. I think it's about giving this international organization a new instruments. So using we could use these small hubs to improve that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marlène. Thank you, Beyond Earth, for having us, and namaste to everyone. If somebody who has worked at the UN COPERS and once she gives her opinion, the rest of all us become just like filling the gap. But broadly, yes, across the world now different forums are coming up, and different forums have, as Nello said, maybe have some specific topic to be discussed, or maybe on a general activities we talk. And are these forums competing with the UN COPERS? I don't think so. They are more complementing. And also, somebody said that we need private players also to be a part of the policy making. I think those other forums are giving that opportunity to those private players to express themselves among the policy makers. And when they go to the UN COPERS, when 100 nations sit together, obviously it is a bit painful to have a slow process, but any good thing comes out of a lot of deliberations. So I think all these different platforms are now should take a role which is more complementing the UN COPERS and which can help that UN COPERS proceedings we can expedite because of that. So I think UN COPERS is still valid and very much there, and we need that more than anything else. Yeah.
Bonjour, thank you. So to complement my profile, I have more an engineering background, and I've worked in the industry and in space agencies, so yeah, I'm really sensitive to what has been said, to take into account the industry and the space commercial industry interest into account. But I've been working on space policy for the past 4 years now, here at the French Embassy. I concur to everything what has been said. I think COPIOS, as part of a UN organization, it really is the forum that has the legitimacy to set up, really international global frameworks and agreements, with a lot of successes, the Outer Space Treaty also, and all the other agreements that followed, like the Rescue Agreement, the Registration Convention. You have an amazing little guide summarizing all the space laws out of this COPIOS. Recently, also in 2019, on another topics, we adopted the 21 long-term sustainability guidelines after a 10 years process, so but some successes. By the way, there is not only the COPIOS dealing with some space issues, the ITU for frequency and telecommunication frameworks, and dealing with allocation of frequency for the space application. And end of the month, there will be the 23rd World Radio Communication Conference, where I understand some topics related to frequency allocation and telecommunication management on the moon surface and Cisluna will be addressed. How do you frame this? Also this UN open-ending working group on limiting the space threats, all these types of organization as part of UN COPRO. So just to say that there are so many different domains that also there are different from at United Nations level. But that being said, it's true that sometimes UN COPRO, the United Nations organization, have some drawbacks. I see two mains. First, the COPROs can be a bit overwhelmed with the pace of the evolution of the space environment, with the number of actors, and we said effectively, how do you take into account private commercial sectors interest into account? Or, and the time sometimes to take decision at the United Nations level, we know it can be complicated. And second, I think it's effectively you have treaties, you have guidelines, but the key issue is how do you implement these guidelines at national level? And it has been said with the Article 6, it's a responsibility of each nation to do that. And I think the key on this second point, why we really need to have some other forum at regional or local levels, really to implement these guidelines and to coordinate and partner with among nations to have a kind of coherent implementation. Very simple, for instance, on the long-term sustainability guidelines, if on some countries you implement too stringent guidelines in terms of end of life, you can impact the competitiveness of your own national industries. So sometimes between France and the US, we have a form of discussions how we can align the approach into regulating for instance, space sustainability, these type of things. And so we need to have different level of forum. I'm thinking about 2 levels. So among agencies, for instance, in exploration, going back to exploration, the International Space Exploration Coordination Working Groups, so created in 2007, I think, yeah, with 27 countries, and discussing among agencies and sharing their strategy, how we can align, implementing some good practices, technologies. There is a report, exploration roadmap updating every 3 or 4 years. Recently in July, they have issued an assessment of nuclear power and propulsion gaps. So all these reports of experts feed the UN discussions. And another interesting forum, it's not completely in exploration, but it's a forum gathering international industries, which is called CONFERS, related to on-orbit servicing. It has been created by DARPA initially 5 years ago, and now it's totally managed by industry, and it's really to discuss technologies to support the emergence of standards, and there are really concrete actions. For instance, it has been adopted recently, so last year or a few months ago, standards norms at ISO level, so 24330, standardizing proximity operation and rendezvous operations. So it's a concrete example showing that with such a regional forum, you can leverage and define some standardization. So I think it's really important to have this type of forum as a complementary, it has been said, to the UN COPLOS discussion.
Thank you so much for your responses. I think everything that you all commented on demonstrates that the UN system, or COPLOS, is very central and important as an international body, but also that it's a growing body, both procedurally, substantively, and in that growth, it seems that there's a need for support where perhaps private industry development can help support that growth and create a more dynamic relationship between those 2 elements. So thank you very much for your perspectives. So we'll move on to question number 2. As more spacefaring states expand and emerging spacefaring states establish their space agendas, there appears to be a tendency towards multilateralism in undertaking endeavors to achieve and enhance results, for example, through scientific and technological collaboration or other capacity building initiatives, or even through the Artemis Accords or the Chinese Lunar Exploration Program. Would it be safe to say that at this point in the trajectory of space exploration and utilization, that all such endeavors are likely best pursued through international collaboration? Or are there instances when, or thematic areas within which advancing such exploration and utilization is best pursued unilaterally? Please share with us your thoughts on the nature of this calibration between multilateral collaboration and unilateral pursuits. So maybe we'll start at the end this time with
Thank
Nicolas.
you. Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, international cooperation. We are the space representative from different agencies, so here in DC. No, but it's always a matter of balance between resources, I think, and sovereignty, you know, and autonomy, and commercial interests at national level. First, of course, we need international cooperation to pursue these endeavors. The noble reason, we all know, you know, it's all about science that benefits the entire humanity. So, of course, we all need to cooperate among these objectives. But that being said, factual reason, space programs and missions are really complex, and no single nation can achieve, you know, this challenge and overcome these challenges alone. We need to share technical expertise, financial resources as well. And for instance, at CNES, almost 100% of our programs are conducted in cooperation with international partners. We have signed more than 600 agreements over the past 50 years with 70 different countries. Half of our budget is dedicated to the European Space Agency budget, so we share resources and fundings with our European partners. So yeah, for this very factual reason, we need to cooperate internationally. And there is a new issue as well that we hear more and more is supply chain availability. Now that we're entering this new exploration program, we're talking about deploying such large infrastructure on the surface of the moon. And so there is this question even from NASA saying, on national level, we don't have the availability of the supply chain. So we need to rely also on international partners, commercial partners at international level, to ensure resiliency and redundancy, for instance, in power provision, cargo, suppliers, cargo return capabilities. So these supply chains represent some opportunities as well for us. Of course, there are some barriers. We were talking about export control issues, these type of things. So, but we need to have discussions to facilitate these commercial exchanges, to embark the supply chain from the international partners as part of this large infrastructure deployment. Yeah, so, and of course, other considerations, so you were talking about unilateralism, so there are questions of sovereignties, of commercial interest, so this needs to be taken into account. And I think there is a good solution, a good compromise for that is how we are historically partnering among agencies. We call it barter, so it's cooperation in nature. So I don't believe so much in a joint technology development, even if we can do on case-by-case basis, but more into interoperability. So into this case, one country about interoperability, how we can integrate some capabilities, not necessarily to have joint technology developments to considering this export control or sovereignty barriers, but how we can integrate some capabilities. For instance, if we're talking about power provision on the moon surface, we could develop some reactor or power provision that could be redundant to other systems from the US and integrated into this chain. So this, I really believe in that way of cooperating.
Thank you. What an interesting answer about the structuring of that collaboration. Thank you, Nicolas. And Krunal.
Marlène, if you see, space itself is as ubiquitous as we told, and so it has a DNA of international collaboration itself. And if I particularly talk about the Indian space program, we have that international flair in our program since the beginning. We had first rocket what we launched from the Indian soil was the Attaché rocket from the US, from the French friends, and then from the Russian friends. And that's how those with the sounding rockets, the Indian space program started with a very humble budget. And today you can see where we are. So international cooperation is always in a part of any space activities. Having said that, today when we are a very established program, we have more than 250 agreements with 60 countries, and we are part of all multilateral forums. We contribute on most of the activities across the globe, wherever the international cooperation is called for. We have a collaboration with all those countries which currently on the dais. We are building satellites with Canas, LUPEX mission with JAXA. We have a program with the Italian Space Agency. So we work with across the agencies. Having said that, when we talk about the Mars and Moon, what kind of activities we should do together, and which are the activities when every country would like to do it alone, or maybe on the sovereign purpose or for the pride purpose of the country. So broadly speak, establishment of the common infrastructure on the Mars and Moon for the navigation, for the communication. This calls for the true international effort. And we need to work on that. We need to develop our protocols. We need to develop the systems for that. And this is a long-term process. And we need to actively work on that. So these are the activities which I feel on the Mars and Moon, we need to work together. But there are few activities for those, to achieve those things, we need to work on the Earth together. Supply chain. Nicolas told that many of our countries are dependent on each other. How are we making that supply chain accessible to the free world? I understand there are concerns with some other elements, but what about the free world? Are we making it happen? Are we facilitating that transfers? Or we want everyone to reinvent the wheel? Because if we are talking that we want to achieve a bigger goal, then there is no point. We all do a reinventing the wheel again, and then we reach there and they said, look, we did it. So somewhere we need to facilitate this kind of things, that how the supply chain is accessible to the other countries. Nicola told about not working together for the technology development. But I feel this is a time, maybe at least in the free world where the like-minded nations, we should work together on the few things which we feel that are common. Because otherwise every country is spending a budget or the money on the same activities which somebody has already done. It's not that somebody will not be able to do it, but it is like reinventing the wheel again. So these are the few things which I feel, again, the protocols like planetary protections. When we go there, how are we behaving there in terms of how are we not disturbing that something which is already there? All those things on Earth we need to work together, and there are few things on the Mars and Moon we need to work together. What about the unilateral efforts? Obviously, every country will have their own science goals and science missions which they want to do it. Somebody would like to do the manufacturing, somebody would like to do something other, maybe other research. That will be left onto the individual country, but these are the bigger things where we, as an international community, we need to work together.
Thank you, Krunal.
Yeah, I completely agree with Nicola, with Krunal, on what they said. And basically, here we are talking about, I think, we are talking about collaboration and competition. I will translate your question in these two words. I would say that, with the space is always being characterized by these two elements. And I go back to what was saying, Nicola was saying before. Maybe we can say that the competition was much more oriented in the first part of the space race, like in the 60s, but now we talk about a lot of cooperation, no collaboration. But we have to be honest with ourselves. It's like, why we are talking about cooperation these days? I mean, because as Nicola was saying, we have some kind of issues. The first one, I think, is technological issues. Everybody knows that we keep saying that the countries by themselves, they cannot reach the moon, Mars, whatever, the exploration in the low Earth orbit stuff. So really, from a technological point of view, we cannot play anymore as a single country. And then there is another, I think, element that is pushing to collaboration. It is like the instability in the economic system, global economic system. It's like every day is like the world is like changing, and we don't know what's going to be next. First the COVID, and then the wars and stuff. So it's like these are like pushing the governments, and as Ian was saying, pretty much same things before, on thinking how we could cooperate to try to protect our needs and the space and stuff. So we are now in an area of collaboration. And what about competition? Well, still we have competition. It's like every day we see that. And either in Europe, it's like, and in England we're talking about that, it's like it's still everyday fight for some access to space stuff with Italy, France, and wherever. It's like, so we are maintaining our national pride, our national interest, military interest. So we cannot really eliminate the competition. So I think it's a balance. It's a balance every day of competition and collaboration. But even if in this time, it's like we need much more collaboration, as we already said. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a very interesting way of framing, answering that question. Thank you, Neil. And now, JAXA has such a strong multilateral presence, so it'll be very interesting to hear what your response is.
Absolutely. So seen from JAXA, and probably the strongest example for multilateral collaboration is, of course, the Artemis program. Since I came to Washington, D.C. in 2018, we've made so much progress. So I'm glad that I don't have to talk about the same thing every time I'm up here. We've had the first in 2019, Vice President Pence announced about the Artemis program. We immediately announced that Japan will join. And then next June, we had this joint exploration declaration of intent, which is abbreviated as JEDI. And we talked about all the things we wanted to do, because this was a declaration. We could talk about a lot of things, including landing a Japanese on the moon surface. And I saw a tweet by a girl at that day that she cried seeing this, a Japanese girl, and I was really moved. And that was the magnitude of the stuff that we do every day. October, we announced the Artemis Accords, first signatories, and then December, ESA, Canada, Japan did sign the Gateway MOU. Then now, moving fast forward a little bit, now we, as Japan, try to go into our next arrangements where we can possibly contribute our pressurized rover by the end of the 2020s, and also have a Japanese land on the moon. And this is very, very exciting for us. I would say I will not go back to Japan until we have this concluded. And it's a very exciting time. So that's, all this we have to say, there's no way of doing this kind of a feat by one country's effort. On the other hand, for instance, the information gathering satellite that we have in Japan, or even the H3 rocket in its development phase, there's very little international collaboration. Particularly for these areas, countries may find it more effective to pursue these programs by themselves. But still, from the beginning to end, I find it very hard to find any space program that is not in one way or other intertwined with the international community. I also paid attention to the talks by the White House earlier today, that we are in conversation also for safety with other countries that we traditionally may have not had conversation with. And this becomes very important because we have to assure that our humans up there are safe, and that the environment up there is we have to share information for this. And so JAXA will be supporting this by our technology. And so I think it's really a function of probably the interests and the priorities and what kind of benefits and the mission objectives you want to achieve by that mission.
So this, I think it's a very interesting array of answers. It sounds like there is ample opportunity for multilateral collaboration, both on the governmental, and private, and commercial sectors. And there's also an importance of retaining unilateral agendas. And both these areas seem to be growing and developing and taking shape. So perhaps over the next few years, we'll see more where the distinctions lie in terms of the importance of unilateral action and versus multilateral collaboration. Thank you for your responses. We have a third and hopefully a fourth question that I'd like to ask. So we'll move on to the third now. Can you please share your thoughts with us on what impacts the increasingly faster-paced and more diverse environment of space exploration and utilization may be having on the nature of relationships on Earth between states and regions? How are these terrestrial relationships reflected in space development and utilization, or could they be impacted by the increasing number and leveraging capacities of private actors in the space industry? So maybe Krunal, we'll start with you.
Marlène, I need to understand your question one more time.
So how is the expanding and growing space sector affecting the relationships between states on Earth and regions, particularly perhaps regions that had there was more diversity in terms of their sociopolitical and economic growth capacities? How is space bridging those connections or aggravating them?
Okay. I'll put it this way. If you see the India space program, the vision for the Indian space program was that how we can use this space technology for the benefit of the humanity, for the benefit of the society at large. the visionary of the Indian space program, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, told that we need to use this high technology to solve the problem of the society. That is the option. So if we see this thing, if we translate for the many other countries which are aspiring countries and they want to get into the space thing, first of all, the space gives them a kind of an excitement of a kind of a pride when they achieve something. So that brings them together. And when you come together, you have many other issues you sorted out, you can solve those issues. How we can make this aspiring nation increase the capability, that is something which this increased cooperation is making it happen. I'll give you an example. India has a program called Unnati, in which program we have trained more than 120 participants from 50 countries. How to build the nanosatellite, how to use the satellite data to solve their routine problems, flooding, fire detections. How can they do the urban planning better way with the satellite data? We are doing that capacity building for them. So when you do such kind of activities in that sense, then they feel that space has brought them together. So if such kind of more examples we build, then those aspiring nations, not only on the earth also will come together and they will get inspired that if we, same benefits when we go to maybe tomorrow to Mars or some other places, this will kind of build the morale for them that, okay, we can do things together. So I think that's my view.
Thank you. Maybe we'll go to the right.
Okay.
Yes.
No, I think there is an amazing global momentum, and to embark many more countries. Like, I don't know, 15 years ago, we had dozens of space agencies. Now I think there are more than 80 countries have space agencies, and it's so hard told that effectively there are more and more stakeholders involved in the game. And it is good because you need to leverage terrestrial technology and expertise, so even emerging countries in space can be part of the exploration adventure. Krunal mentioned application as well, so everybody can embark the space adventure. Now we need to effectively shape and structure the organization of we discussed this a bit, of so many new players. I can tell you, for instance, in France, so CNES is a historical old space agency, but 2 years ago we went through a reorganization with a new directorate dedicated to strategy and accompany, for instance, the new ecosystem as well. So the new players, so making the bridge between startups and SMEs, if we talk about private commercial companies, to investors, private investors as well. So we need really to rethink our organizations to tackle this fast-paced evolution of the space environment. So I think it's really beneficial, and you see that, for instance, in the US, for diplomacy, they issued, I think it was in May, a strategic framework for space diplomacy. So just to illustrate how space can be beneficial for international relations and space diplomacy. And as far as France is concerned, so I don't know if you remember, but in 2021 there was an affair, we called it the AUKUS affair, so there was a big contract, submarine contract, that has been cancelled. And 1 week after, the French ambassador gathered us and said, okay, guys, we have the mission to reestablish the relationship between France and the US. Wow. And then I said, yeah, space, we have some things going on with Artemis and other programs like the Space for Climate Observatory, how we can use space at the service of fighting climate change. And on top of that, then, so space has been escalated at the highest level of government. We set up a space comprehensive dialogue at the level of government. When President Macron came in DC for a state visit in December, we organized a dedicated space sequence at NASA headquarters with Vice President Harris, dedicated industrial session with Don Graves, the Assistant Secretary of Commerce. So just to illustrate that it's no more business for space agencies and a few space agencies, but really among many different countries, many governments as well, and it's really good for space and for all the momentum we are talking about.
Just a facilitator for diplomacy. Yes, wonderful. Thank you. Aniello.
Yes. Yeah. Leveraging the other country, emerging country in space. Yes, we are doing a lot as Italy. We are we are working a lot with the African countries. I know that this is a very interesting topic right now in this time lately. And we are like, as you know, we have this cooperation with the Kenya, based in Malindi, in which we are like, we have this, the Blayo Center. We are organizing an international school for just to try to, in Kenya, to try to just leverage this country to tell them in the space business, so we can give the possibility to emerging country to be part of the system. This is my first part of the question. I see the timing, but I would just to underline this, that we are talking about leveraging country, but at the same time, we need to remember that we were the space, and I come back to what I was saying before, is now an operational domain. So it's like one side we are leveraging the countries, emerging countries, and the other side we are like, we need to protect and defend the space. So, and I go back to the Space Force and the NATO, that was like from NATO's perspective to consider space like an operational domain alongside with land, sea, and cyber, and air, obviously. So it's like we need to start to develop this kind of idea of leveraging the other country to defend and to protect the space as a operational domain. So this is my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Masami?
So very short then, focusing on the direction from space to terrestrial relationships. The key would be probably affordability, responsiveness, this and resiliency that we are seeing as a big change now with the industry coming in and having much innovation, so that this may possibly change the way either we monitor the change of environment or we monitor other events that are going on Earth, communications, positioning, all of that, and it will. It is changing as we witness that, and the availability of such images and data and communication is really changing the way we operate on Earth. So yeah, I think there is definitely a connection between terrestrial and space, and in both ways.
Thank you. I know we're running short on time. However, I do want to carve out a little bit to support the mission statements that Courtney and Steve spoke about at the beginning of our day today, and really think about human development of communities beyond Earth. So my last and final question for all of you is, so more consideration, funding, and planning are being invested into our development as an interplanetary species through the potential for future establishment of communities beyond Earth, such as on the moon. What are your thoughts, however theoretical, on how such human communities might be organized? Will those communities reflect our diplomatic nation-state model on Earth, a framework of contracted national collaboration such as that which has supported the ISS? Could they reflect a purely autonomously established mosaic of individuals and entities acting in their private capacities, or even potentially take the form of an entirely novel arrangement? Aside from the existing ISS example, could other examples of communities living and working in physical spaces of shared national jurisdiction or beyond national jurisdiction give us a glimpse of how those beyond Earth communities may function, or what the challenges could be in practically and peacefully maintaining them? So again, we're short on time, so maybe about a minute, minute and a half.
Ask us to answer that in 1 minute.
Yes, I know, but we'll try. Yes. Okay. So why don't we start with you now, Ms.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So with all the work we have done towards, let's take the example of Artemis or Moon to Mars beyond Earth. I think there is actually we are almost there. It's not like theoretical. It's too short to talk about theories. Or sci-fi. It's upon us, and we're there. Actually, within a few years, or in the next 15 months, we're launching more than a handful of lunar missions to the lunar surface. So we're getting there. So I think there are not so many options that we can take at this moment, practically, and what is probably going to happen is not something entirely new to us. We could be, of course, creative and along the way, but we will build on best practices, all the guidelines we have already had, all the building blocks, and also the political declarations. We will get the best parts out of that, and those bilateral or multilateral agreements that have to come to place to take care of the actual missions that are happening, because we need legal instruments to place something on the lunar surface with somebody. It's hardware exchange or human activity is not going to happen without any legal instrument. We have to have that within a few years. So a combination of those legal instruments will probably become a web of international instruments and provide the way forward. That's my thinking.
Thank you.
Yeah, very short. We have the experience of ISS, and I think that it's working really well. Even if in this time of lately with the Russian stuff, so we are still keep working with them, and everything is going on. I think with in lunar, we are building the first modules so for the lunar activity. So basically, if you think though, for the first community over the moon, it's going to be pretty much like the ISS, because they are going to live in kind of small modules, specialized modules. So it's from the first years, I don't see too many except for the areas, but it's not going to be a problem for, and I agree with Masami. So it's like just we can keep maintaining the same regulation in the beginning, start to go there and then see what happens. It's like much more like, okay, day by day, understanding what's going on.
Marlène, this is a very philosophical question, and I'll give a philosophical answer to this. All those models you described, I think maybe some Venn diagram that, and when common area may come there. But I feel if we become a human on Earth, then we'll go as a human there. If we'll go as American, as a Japanese, Indian, then we'll be a. So what we call in ancient Indian philosophy, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one Earth, one world, one family. If we feel that we are a part of a family, then whomsoever goes there is a part of a bigger family of the Earth. That's it.
Beautiful response. Thank you.
No, I agree, but also I think if we settle, so I think we'll not set up a community on the moon actually, because the moon is really a test bed to learn how to live on another planet, and perhaps thinking on a short-term basis, I mean, the time we'll have the technology to set up on Mars. I think we'll export our cultures, our differences also from Earth. So I don't believe that we'll set up a new community. Perhaps I'm wrong, but I think so. In terms of, and I concur to what has been said, we have a very good example of the ISS, and on top of the guidelines, Artemis Accords provide principles, but we need also to frame the operations on the moon, on Mars, and an instrument like the intergovernmental agreement of the ISS, I think, is a good starting point, because how do you cope when we arrive on Mars? The resources are limited. How you do share these resources, and the Outer Space Treaty also, prevent from appropriation of the celestial body. So you cannot. There is no notion of land property on the other planets. So we need to cope with all these discussions. The Artemis Accord introduced this notion of safety zones. So it's a bit polemic, but I think it's important to discuss this point to assess. Okay, if you arrive at the same place and you want to dig in the same hole, and how do you manage this type of situations, and from a legal point of view. So I concur to what has been said. We need to find legal instrument, intergovernmental instrument, to frame this operation and this type of scenario.
Well, thank you. I think we had a fascinating discussion. We touched on many pivot points around international relations, collaborations from Earth and beyond. So thank you so much for your time and your inputs. It was a pleasure. Thank you.